Hi everyone, it is 2 o'clock and we are ready to get started with our weekly webinar for this week. My name is Courtney Graham and I'm just going to do a brief introduction and let you know that I will be muting the phones on your end too, just to eliminate any background noise that we may have, and we will unmute at the end to allow for a time of questions. So I'm going to go ahead and mute right now.
All participants are muted, but may unmute themselves. All participants are muted and may not unmute themselves.
Okay, now everyone has been muted and I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Scott Monahan and he is going to walk you through this week's webinar.
Thank you, Courtney. And I want to welcome everybody to this week's webinar titled The Listing Consultation Part 2. So as you know, my name is Scott Monahan. I'm Career Development Coach for Princeton School of Real Estate. And this is a continuation of our last program last week, which was the Listing Consultation Part 1. What you may want to do is have your Listing Consultation book handy, or your Masters Academy Listing Consultation Instruction Manual that we have handed out in the Pro Start sessions on Friday. I would also suggest that you might want to jot some things down along the way because I'm going to give you a fair amount of content today. The first thing that I'd like to mention to you is that over the last 3 weeks we've talked about the tools necessary to make a professional listing presentation or listing consultation. And the tool that we've used mostly was the Listing Consultation book. However, you may recall that I asked you to put a couple of pages in the very beginning of the book, the first of which was your bio or your resume. The second was a copy of the quarterly report with all of the graphs on it. And then the third was the National Association of Realtors pie chart demonstrating where buyers found the houses that they ultimately bought. Today, what I'd like to suggest is that there are 3 pages that I would like you to put in the back of your book for the purposes of making your closing points with the seller. The first of which will be the marketing plan, which is a variation of the marketing calendar, and we handed that out last Friday at the Pro Start session. So if you are not familiar with the individual agent marketing calendar, it is on the hub, or you can be asking management for a copy of that. So I would recommend that you put that in the back of your book. The next thing that I would suggest that you put in the back of your book is a copy of the Home Warranty Service Agreement brochure. This is the one that fully itemizes all of the information regarding the home warranty that we offer through the company. And I would recommend that you put a 3-hole punch to that document and keep that in the back of your book as well. The last is a tool that is not represented in the marketing services book, but is equally important to closing the listing, and that is the quality service guarantee. So this is a unique product that is offered by Weidel, and that should be in the back of your book as well. So with that said, what I'd like to do now is just review very, very quickly some fundamentals of what the presentation is all about. This is a little bit of an academic look at it, or a salesmanship look at the presentation. You may want to jot down a couple of points as I go through this with you, but the essence of our presentation, and this is the theoretical viewpoint of it, is number 1, if we go down a list of 1 through 5 or 6, number 1 on our list is that from a sales point of view, this is a problem solution presentation, meaning that the purpose behind getting the seller's attention is you must give a compelling reason. So number 1, I'd like you to write down problem solution scenario, and then underneath that, if you want to write compelling reason. That's number one. And I'll explain this further in a moment. Number two, in the course of our presentation, I'd like you to write down feel good. In other words, there's a section of our presentation and it's just designed to make the seller just feel good about our company. Number three, I want you to write down same as. In other words, when a seller is considering who they will list with, they are looking for certain fundamental features or services of your company that are the same as they would get from any other highly successful, reputable company. Number four, I'd like you to write down points of differentiation. Points of differentiation. So on one hand, we're going to say that we have all the same services as the biggest and the best, but on the other hand, we have some points of differentiation that make us exceptional over and above our competition. So points of differentiation. Number five would be when we ask for an initial commitment from the seller. And then number six will be pricing. So I'd just like you to write down those 6 items. And now let me give you a comparison to what we did on our presentation so far. So again, I'll go to the top of the list where I had problem, solution, scenario, compelling reason. So to the right of that, I would like you to write, that was the discussion that we had about our quarterly report. And if you recall, we compared the bar chart as to how many listings there are on any given month compared to how many sales there are. And then we also used the National Association of Realtors pie chart. The purpose of that was to indicate to the seller that yes, there are more houses on the market than there are being sold at any given time. That creates a compelling reason. Number two, the feel good. Well, that's all about our company. So if you want to write to the right of feel good, that's our company. The fact that there is a president of our company named Rick Weidel, and he's a real person and he's accessible. The fact that the company has been in existence for well over 100 years. We do charitable giving, and we've received statewide awards. There's nothing there to argue about, but what it does is it gives credibility to the company. Number three, same as. Those are the fundamental sales services that you would expect from any large real estate company. So that's marketing. So if you want to write down to the right of same as, that's marketing. That's the multiple listing service. That's the web migration. That's relocation services. All of those things are the same as what you would expect from some other large company. Number four, points of differentiation. This is going to be a major part of our discussion today, and that will be one of the things that we brought up at the tail end of last week's program was your personal marketing plan. Now that personal marketing plan may include what you're going to do to promote their property individually, whether it be through postcards or social media or open houses. The second thing that I would write down to the right of points of differentiation is 5-star marketing. We're going to spend a reasonable amount of time talking about 5-star marketing today. And the other one that I would write down next to points of differentiation would be quality service guarantee. And Weidel is the only company that has a quality service guarantee, as will be demonstrated later on. Number 5, I said close. Well, that's where you're going to initially ask for the business. I'll give you an example of what that might be. That would be where if I said to the seller, did you like what I showed you? And of course they'll say yes. And then I'll say, so let me ask you this. If we could agree on the price, do you think we could market the home? That would be an initial request for the listing. That's actually before we demonstrate the market value analysis. And then number 6 was price theory, and we'll spend time on that today as well. That has to do with some of the charts associated with pricing right in the first place. So I'll leave you with this thought, and that is that consumers will not differentiate the nuances of one service versus another service provided by a competitor. What they will do is the consumer will recognize the difference between something that our company has and another company doesn't offer at all. So we could say that we belong to 3 multiple listing services, and somebody else might say, well, they belong to 2 multiple listing services. The only thing that the seller will remember is that we belong to multiple listing service. But if we were to say to a seller, well, we have a 5-star marketing advantage and the other companies don't have a 5-star marketing advantage, that's where the seller will differentiate between the two. So hopefully that was clear enough for you to understand on the webinar. We will be addressing some of this again in the ProStar classes. But now what I'd like to do is I'd like to have you turn in your consultation book to the 5-star marketing. And what we're going to do is we're going to have a discussion page by page about 5-star marketing. So if you would turn to the first page, which is going to be page 43, and that is the cover sheet for 5-star marketing. And for those of you who are working with the instruction manual, it will be page 51. So every time that I address a page, I'm going to give you first the page that relates to the consultation book, and the second one will be the page that relates to the instruction manual. So when we get into 5-star, 5-star is a whole new segment of our presentation. So maybe you can recall from last week I gave you the definition of a segue, and a segue is a transition statement. These are little statements that you'll say off the cuff that allows you to transfer the attention from the last subject matter to the next. So if I said, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, let me share with you some things about 5-star. And then on page 43 or 51 of the training manual, what I would be saying is 5-star marketing impacts every aspect of a real estate transaction. Now, I think that for most of the agents in the company, they have not really come to terms with what 5-star is all about. So I would ask you to turn to page 45, and it's page 52 on the manual. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a taste of what 5-star is all about. The essence of 5-star is that it recognizes that there are 2 equal parts to a real estate brokerage fee. There is the buyer agent's fee and the seller agent's fee. And what we want to do is we want to dissect the two. So instead of talking to the seller about the fact that our fee is 6%, we would rather be saying that the buyer agent's fee will be 3% and the seller agent's fee will be equal to the buyer agent's fee. What it does is it breaks it up. When you say 6%, the fact is that you or your company, it's deceiving, you or your company don't retain the full 6% brokerage fee. And there are some marketing advantages to offering an appropriate fee to the seller. So when we get to page 45 in the consultation book, or as I said, 52 in the training manual, we want to explain that 5-star recognizes that there are 2 equal parts to a real estate brokerage fee. The buyer agents are equivalent of half, and the seller agent gets half. Now I'm going to have you turn the page to page 46, which is also page 53 in the training manual. And what we're trying to identify here are 2 things. One is that the 5-star advantage offers buyer agents a 3% selling commission. At some point, you have to have a discussion with your sellers about fees, and what we're doing is we're tying it to the 5-star marketing advantage. And so this is the point where we start to get the notion of what the real estate brokerage fee is out to the seller. So again, I'm going to say the 5-star advantage offers buyer agents a 3% selling commission. That's why buyer agents love to sell Weidel. And we have had numerous surveys done, and you can see on the page exactly what the return is from professionalism to compensation to responsiveness and accountability. And again, that's why everybody loves to sell Weidel. Now we're going to just move it up a little bit more, and I'm going to turn to page 47 in your consultation book, or 53 in the instruction manual. And we're going to noodle down a little bit further into what 5-star is. And here it is. 5-star marketing encourages the buyer's agent to meet the seller's objectives. Now, if you recall from our early section of our presentation, there was on page 7, there was a little bit of a graphic, and the objective there was to indicate that buyer agents work for the buyer. That's in conflict with the seller's objectives. 5-star bridges the two. Everyone loves to sell Weidel. So we brought that up very early when we were talking about agency. Well, now that we're into 5-star and we're going to discuss fees, we're going to say that on page 47, 5-star marketing encourages the buyer's agent to meet the seller's objective. So theoretically, a seller's agent's objective is to get the price up for the seller. Theoretically, a buyer's agent's objective for the buyer is to get the price down. What 5-star does is it encourages the buyer's agent to maybe think a little bit more proactively towards meeting the seller's objectives. Now, I'm going to stop right now and pause to say that that is not to say that in the normal course of a transaction that both buyer agents and seller's agents don't work hard to reach a mutually acceptable price. But this is a way to encourage a little bit better participation from some agents. All right, we're going to turn the page now to page 48, and that is page 54 in the instruction manual. Now, I'm going to give you 3 points that relate to 5-star and relates to page 48. Now, you may recall that when we talked about web migration, and that was on page 30 of our book, and you don't have to go look at page 30 right now, but on page 30 we said that everything that goes into the multiple listing service then migrates to the web to more websites than you could ever imagine. So the multiple listing service is the basis for all of the explosion of internet sites that the home will be presented to. Now, we're going to think about that in exactly the reverse now as it relates to 5-star. So I'm going to give you 3 points. Number 1, house listings migrate from the multiple listing service to the web. That's what I had just said. But then number 2, next, when a buyer finds the house on the web, whether it be on Zillow or Trillia or any which way that the buyer finds the house on the web, and whether the buyer gets referred to an agent or whether the agent or the buyer seeks an agent out individually, ultimately the buyers get in contact with an agent. So now, instead of talking about the MLS explodes everything out onto the web, now what we're saying is when somebody does find it on the web, they revert back to an agent. And then number 3, the agents look at the MLS for the information about the house. So it goes out and it comes back. And what happens is that when the agent sees it on the multiple listing service and then sees that it is a 5-star designated house, now is when 5-star starts to work to the seller's advantage. Hopefully that makes sense to you. And so I'm going to move on to page 49 or 54 in the manual. and I'm going to give you a thought that relates to page 49, and that is buyer agents. 5-star is all about the buyer's agent. It really is nothing about the buyer. Buyer agents see the 5-star designation in the multiple listing service. So therefore, 5-star makes buyer agents want to sell Weidel houses. So if we are compensating the buyer's agents at a 3% level, so that's not a bonus, but it is at an adequate level to incite their interest, then buyer agents, if they see that it is a Weidel 5-star house, will want to sell Weidel homes. So hopefully that makes sense to you, and I believe that it'll make sense to your sellers. So with that, I'm going to have you turn the page now to page 50, and that would be page 55 in the instruction manual. Again, what we're going to do is we're going to take the same approach that we did with the web migration, and we're going to say that your house will be designated a 5-star home on our customized marketing. So therefore, at any such time that a buyer contacts an agent, whether it be one of our agents or whether it be an agent from another company, they will ultimately recognize that they're going to be fairly compensated on the sale of the home. So again, what we're doing is we're broadcasting out, but it comes back to the agent, and then it comes back to the multiple listing service. 5-star is a fairly sophisticated viewpoint within the real estate industry, and as such, this is one of those things that any of your competition will not be having a discussion about, and that's why I said this is one of those things that differentiates us from the competition. So now I'm on page 52 of the services manual and page 56 of the instruction manual, and this has to do with negotiation. And what I'm going to say to the seller is that 5-star impacts the buyer's agents during the negotiation. In other words, 5-star helps bring both sides together. So if there's a little bit of give and take, if there's a 5-star designation on the house, it's possible that the seller will get the benefit of the doubt. And so how quickly could a buyer's agent lose a seller thousands and thousands of dollars in the negotiation? All right, we're going to turn the page to page 54 in the Seller Services book and page 57 of the instruction manual. And what we're talking about here is there are two types of negotiation that take place on the sale of any house. The first is initial negotiation at the time of the contract, but any of us who have been in the real estate business for a considerable length of time will know that when the buyer makes all of their inspections, there tends to be a second round of negotiations. So what we want to point out to the seller is that the 5-star advantage can help with post-contract contingencies. An example of that would be home inspection negotiations. And there could be others. There could be when an appraisal doesn't come in at the right amount or something to that effect. So hopefully at this point the sellers have seen some value in all of the services that we provide under marketing, plus the fact that we are well respected for our cooperation with other agents, and that can do nothing but help the seller to get a sale faster. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a segue. Remember, we're going to go from one subject matter to another, and so this would be an example of a segue if I were to say to the seller, so let's talk about our other services. And then I'm going to ask you to turn the page to page 55, and 55 is going to be the transition page. It's page 58 in the instruction manual. And what I want to say to the seller at this point is that Weidel is a one-stop shopping company, which includes real estate sales, mortgage, and title insurance. And so then I'm going to turn the page, and you can see how quickly I go through the different pages. So it's not that we have to dwell on it forever and ever and ever. And now I'm at page 57 of the consultation book, or page 59 of the instruction manual. And this is the Princeton Mortgage Corporation page. And all we're going to say about this is that Princeton Mortgage Corporation is a full-service mortgage provider. But what they are is committed to making the sale for Weidel. So if we are involved in the mortgage, there is an added incentive for the mortgage company to help, if there are any problems with the sale, to make it work the best way they possibly can. And then we're going to turn the page, page 58 of the consultation book and page 60 of the instruction manual. And this page refers to Princeton Assurance Title Insurance Company. And that's our title insurance company. And our title insurance company works seamlessly with all of the other realtors and all the other mortgage companies, in particular with our own mortgage company, to make sure that the sale closes. So what we have is, we have from start to finish the real estate company that provides the sale, we have the mortgage company that provides the mortgage, and we have the title insurance company that provides the title insurance to close the sale. Hopefully this is, you're keeping up with me. I'm giving you a lot of information, but this is just a walk in the park through the Weidel Services book. Now I'm going to turn to page 59, and that is page 61 of the instruction manual. And this is our red door service. I am not asking anybody to spend any particular time on this. All we want to do is we want to put out there that our Weidel red door service can help you with your next move anywhere. So if it invites the conversation as to where they may be moving next, whether they have engaged another real estate agent out of the area, it's just a way to open up the door. It's not an involved conversation unless it leads to something. All right, so let's turn the page. I'm on page 62 now of the Weidel Services book, and that would be page 64 of the instruction manual. There is no real page there, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask a particularly important closing question right now. And I'm going to say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, did you like what I showed you? Remember I told you that as we go through the fundamentals of a presentation, at some point you have to close. Well, this is the beginning of a close. And if I said, so how did I do, Mr. and Mrs. Seller? Did you like all the things that I showed you? And they say yes. And then if I said, well, if we could agree on the price, do you think we could market the home? Now, for some of you, that's going to seem a little strange because we didn't go through the market value analysis yet. But if they say, well, I'm not sure, then we know that they're not sold on us or our services. And we might want to stop right there and ask them some questions, and maybe they didn't understand something, but at least you know. If they say, yeah, we like everything we said, and as long as we can agree on the price, sure. Now, I want to ask you, if you were sitting at the kitchen table with your sellers and they said, yeah, as long as we can agree on the price, we'd probably be okay. How does that make you feel? So it's very, very important to start to ask about the price early on in the presentation. So now, let's go to page 63 of the program manual and also page 64 of the instruction manual. And this is where we're going to get into pricing. And what I'm going to recommend is that you should have a little bit of a theoretical discussion about pricing before you actually get to your market value analysis. The reason is that it's much easier to say, let me share something with you about pricing before we talk about the price of your home. That way it doesn't sound like I'm trying to to make excuses for why you should do this or that. So here we go. I'm going to say, before we talk about the price, I'd like to share some thoughts with you for you to consider. And then I want you to turn the page to page 64. Now, these are pages that you need to get acquainted with above and beyond this webinar. But on page 64, which is also 65 of the instruction manual, this is the one that says how the real estate market works. And it has to do with pricing your inventory. And effectively what we're trying to say is, if you overprice the home, it can take you longer to get less. And then move on, move to the next page if they want to discuss it further, but at least you got it out on the table. Page 65, 66 of the instruction manual. This is coming from the National Association of Realtors, and it was a survey that was done as to what is most important to sellers. And what we're going to say there is most sellers want the highest price in the shortest time. I could stop and say, would that be true with you as well? And then the best way is to price it right from the start. And that's enough. So if at that point I said to the sellers, so Mr. and Mrs. Seller, how about if we talk about your price? And that's when you're going to go through your market value analysis. Now, for the purposes of this program, I'm not going to spend any time on the market value analysis. But what I would say to you is this. After you present the market value analysis and you make some recommendations about the price, a fantastic tool for you to use is page 68 of the instruction manual and page 68 of the consultation book. It happens to be the same page. And this is the pricing triangle. I use this with every seller that I talk to, and what you're trying to do is determine out of that triangle, if the triangle represents all of the buyers for any given house, what you're looking to do is price the home at a reasonable level within that triangle so that a good cross-section of buyers would be interested in the house. It doesn't have to be in the middle, but I can tell you this, if you put it at the absolute pinnacle, there may be one buyer in the whole world that would buy that house for that price. I don't know what the odds of finding them are. And if you priced it all the way at the bottom, obviously everybody'd be interested. So this is a way for you to adjust your pricing and not lose face with the sellers. Ultimately, the market will tell you where the pricing is. You're either going to get showings or you're not going to get showings. You're either going to get offers or you're not going to get offers. And so the market will speak for itself. So, after you've concluded all of that, I think it would be appropriate for you to ask for the listing again. And that can be as easy as to say, so can we go ahead? What I wouldn't want you to say is, so what do you think? That's what everybody says. But if we said, so can we go ahead, and then you'll get whatever objections you're going to get, and you'll have to answer them. One of the things that may satisfy your sellers is the item that I had you put in the very back of your book. And I think at this point it would be appropriate for you to pull out the quality service guarantee. And what our quality service guarantee is, it's an insurance to the sellers that we're going to do everything we can possibly do and everything that we promised. And as you recall from our initial conversation in the beginning of the presentation, we get paid on a contingency basis. So if we don't perform, we don't get paid. So on the basis of that, I think it's very appropriate for you to ask for the listing again. So what do you think, Mr. and Mrs. Seller? Can we go ahead? I hope that you've enjoyed the walkthrough of the consultation book over the last couple of weeks. I would invite you to attend the ProStart class that will be held in the Pennington Hopewell Valley office on Route 31 in Pennington. And we will be addressing everything that I covered in today's webinar, and to a greater extent, a little deeper conversation on all of it. So that concludes our program for today. We'd like to see all of you at the ProStart program on Friday from 9 to 12. Call and make a reservation. There's limited space. And I want to thank you for listening. Now I'm going to turn the conversation over to Courtney Graham, and she'll take any questions and we'll answer them together. So I thank you very much for your time.
All participants are unmuted.
Okay, thank you everyone for participating today. As Scott said, it is now time for questions. So if anyone has any questions, you are unmuted on our end. So please ask away. Okay, if there are no questions today, we'll go ahead and end the call. Thank you guys so much for participating. This call was recorded and we will put it up on the hub, so in case you need to reference it at a later date, you will be able to do so via the hub. So again, thank you. We really appreciate you guys spending some time with us this afternoon, and we look forward to seeing you on Friday. Have a good afternoon.